Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 123. In this show, we review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week and everything in between. So let's get started. Had a pretty average week for a number of books, and I bought 21 books. So what was worst pick of the week? What was number 21? And for me this week it was Batman the Merciless. Not a horrible book by any means, just kind of the least book that I liked this week. But this one I feel had a lot of potential. It was Batman having a relationship with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman dies. He kind of goes on this vengeance spiel, kind of like all the other metal books. And by the end he almost kills Steve Trevor, so you really get to see that Batman's in a dark place. So that's kind of the story. Love Francis Madaple's artwork, but I feel like the emotions between Batman and Wonder Woman weren't really there, and that really made the book suffer. There wasn't any emotional impact of why Batman was doing these things. It kind of felt like it was just going through the motions. So Batman the Merciless, issue 1, gets 2.5 stars, and that was number 21. Moving on to number 20, which I haven't picked up this book in a little while, but because it was Marvel Legacy, I did pick it up, and that is Mighty Captain Marvel, issue 125, which I also did an in-depth review on Comic Frontline for, but you know, I was expecting this issue to look at Captain Marvel's past a little bit more, because that was what was promised with the issue, but really this is only a setup to look into the past, because Captain Marvel disappears by the end of the issue, and it looks like she's going to be in another dimension where she has to really look at her past head on. But I kind of wish that is what this issue was about. It was more about her team, the Alpha Flight, and her interaction and them being grounded. And, you know, that's a story we've definitely seen before with things like Guardians of the Galaxy. And I just don't really love the Alpha Flight dynamic. I would read Captain Marvel for a Captain Marvel book, not an Alpha Flight book, and that is the reason I dropped it. But I will try out the next issue now that we are digging into our past with this next one. So I gave this one 2.5 stars. Now moving on to number 19, which is Wonder Woman issue 33. Now, this issue doesn't have Wonder Woman in it at all. It actually is a Darkseid book, which it was an issue we kind of needed, because even last issue I said, oh, there wasn't enough of Grail, who's Darkseid's daughter, because she was introduced as kind of the villain or antagonist of the story. And it's interesting to see Grail, as the daughter of Darkseid, have to be kind of like the mother of Darkseid in this issue. But not a lot happens. It's mostly about their relationship and them setting up for things to happen. So I gave this one 3 stars. Wasn't bad, but if you're looking for more of a Wonder Woman book, this is not a filler, but it's kind of one-shotty to lead into more storylines. So Wonder Woman issue 33 gets 3 stars. Now speaking of one-shotty off-book issues, let's go to number 18, which is Outcast issue 31. So this actually focuses on one of our villains of the story, which we've seen a couple of times. His name is, what is his name? Roland Tusk, and we get to see who he is and what his life is all about. And you know, he has a normal family, of course, and he's still dealing with these outcast stuff. You see, he's not a good person. He like rips someone's tongue out of their mouth, so you see that he's a darker type person. He is not on the good side. So it's interesting because with the Outcast book, we haven't really seen that side. We haven't seen the evil side, and we finally get to see their point of view. But also I feel like I don't know if this issue was totally necessary. I think we could have been told this story throughout other issues where we do focus on our main characters and him. So that's kind of the lackluster part of the issue, but still interesting enough if you've been following the Outcast story to pick up. So Outcast issue 31 gets 3 stars. Now moving on to number 17, which is Copperhead issue 15, another Image book. And this is kind of a slower issue until we get to the end, where we get to learn our main character, who we always thought was this mother of this child, and you know, she was the sheriff of town, actually is not the kid's real mother. I forget the kid's name. Zeke is not actually Zeke's mother. So I thought that was a really interesting twist, but it does take a little while to get to that point. A lot of it is just them searching for her. So I kind of wish we got to see more of our main character, but still an interesting cliffhanger that gets me interested to see where it goes. So Copperhead issue 15 gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 16, which is Nightwing The New Order issue 3, and we are towards the middle of the series, and overall I've been liking it. I do like this issue. It's Dick Grayson trying to find his son, and we get to see him interacting with other interesting Bat players like Tim and Batwoman, of course. And by the end, we get to see him meet up with some old friends, Wally and Starfire. And they are not very happy to see him, obviously, with everything they've done. So it's an interesting issue to see how far Dick Grayson will go. I like seeing Tim. He's, you know, a married man or at least a father. And it looks like his daughter looks a lot like Stephanie. So I'm in my mind, my headcanon, Tim is married Stephanie in this universe. But it was a good issue. The artwork is okay. It's at times I feel like his gymnastics look a bit too lanky, and I do love that they're showcasing that, his more flexible side. But some of the action I thought could have been a little better. But overall, I like the issue. So Nightwing New Order issue 3 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to the next issue, which is number 15, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 790. This is a little lower from the last issue, but still enjoying the book. It's Peter coming face to face with the Human Torch after Johnny learns that Peter sold the Baxter building, which I think that fight was well deserved. Slower parts of the issue, seeing Clash again, don't really care about the character. I mean, I think his motives made sense in the issue, but I don't really need to see more of Clash personally. But I do like that Peter is still exploring that he likes being Spider-Man more than Peter Parker at this moment, because everyone hates Peter and people are kind of liking Spider-Man, which is the vice versa than we usually get with Spider-Man. So that's still a very interesting plot point. And then we got a cliffhanger that we kind of all figured was going to happen, which is Joe Robertson invites Peter to get a job at the Daily Bugle for the science section. So we already kind of knew that was going to happen, but it's still an interesting cliffhanger. So The Amazing Spider-Man issue 790 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 14, which is Saga issue 48, and this is the last issue until... well, it's the issue before a hiatus, so we are going to get a couple months hiatus. And this one is a little bit of a slower issue where we get to see Prince Robot, whatever his name is, his son, and another character just kind of wandering the woods, and we get to learn a little bit more about them. And then in the end, I did like that moment with, obviously, our main character, where she said, well, this is my brother, especially after the arc where we see her lose her brother. So it's kind of interesting and nice to kind of see this found family being created, and that's something I did really like about the issue. So, and we also, of course, get the Saga creatures that this title is known for. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 13, which is X-Men Blue, issue 14. And I always feel like the blue parts are a little less interesting than the gold parts. And I think maybe it's the artwork too. I'm a little less invested in the blue parts, but still a good issue where we get to see the behind the scenes of Mojo World. So you get to see a little bit more of the actual projection of Mojo World, which was cool. But the other characters I felt were a bit more scattered than Gold. I think they were able to have more of a spotlight and focus on individual characters. Here it's a bit more scattered, but still an entertaining arc. I still like it, and if you enjoy the X-Men, it's definitely a must-read. So X-Men Blue, issue 14, gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 12, which is Action Comics, issue 990. So this one's kind of in the middle for me. And I did like the Jor-El and John moments the most. I like that John actually wants to hear his grandfather out. And his grandfather actually does care about this family, even Lois, even though she's a human. So I like that aspect. And then Jor-El just trying to save his family from dying, and obviously there's this force that will kill the Earth, and that's all part of this DC Rebirth mystery. So I like that aspect. There are slower parts though, especially the Oz group that's following Jor-El. I don't really care about them, and that is a big part of the issue. So that's the slower part, but once Jor-El and John's on the screen, I did like the issue a bit better. So Action Comics issue 990 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 11, which is Silver Surfer, issue 14. So this issue, if you've been reading Silver Surfer, it's a nice touching epilogue to the book. Now, it is an epilogue though, so in my mind, I don't know if we really needed this issue. I feel like issue 13 was really the last chapter of Silver Surfer, but if you want some more feel-goodness of the book, read this issue. It's fun. You get to see the Dawn Norrin dynamic a bit more, which I really enjoyed from this run, obviously. But it's also sad that it's going to be left behind with this run. We won't see Dawn again, and I thought she was a very interesting character. But yeah, it's heartfelt, and if you've been following the series, pick it up. But if you're kind of on the fence with the series, this is not necessarily an issue you need to pick up. So Silver Surfer issue 14 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 10, which is Jean Grey, issue 8. And this is an interesting issue where we get to see Jean go in the head of Emma. And Emma's head's kind of weird. And it focuses on time of Jean Grey, which was very dark and soap opera-ish. So I did like that. It takes a little while to get to that point of that moment, but I did like it, and like I said, it's interesting to see, you know, Emma's head, because Emma has a very confusing psyche, so I did enjoy that. And then the ending kind of brings us nearer to the Phoenix Resurrection storyline that we've all been waiting for. So Jean Grey issue 8 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 9, glad to see this one higher, and that is Glitterbomb, The Fame Game, issue 2. I didn't love issue 1 because I felt like our main character was kind of hard to understand, hard to get along with, just because she had so many negative qualities, but now we got to see some more positive qualities of why we would want to follow her, because it is a new lead. And we actually do see our old lead in this issue too, and a bit more of her, which was nice. But we get to see her just being engulfed in Hollywood. She kind of wants to do the right thing, but because of fame and all that, she gets engulfed into it all, and it's an interesting message. But by the end, we see our old character kind of winning the game, and we finally get to see her in the horror aspect a bit more. So I like that. So I gave this issue 3.5 stars. Alright, moving on to number 8, which is Jughead The Hunger, issue 1. And I liked everything but Jughead in this issue, and I'm very interested in Jughead being a werewolf, but the carnival stuff kind of slows down the issue. But the good stuff in this issue are the supporting characters. We get to see glimpses of Betty being an awesome, kick-ass werewolf hunter and trying to find Jughead to, I guess, kill him. We'll have to see what happens. And then other people becoming werewolves, like Reggie, and him encountering Veronica. So what is Veronica's role in this book? I'm very curious about. Will she be a werewolf? That'll be very interesting between the Betty and Veronica relationship. Or will she be something else? Or will she just, be the casualty? What's going to happen to Veronica? I did like that cliffhanger. And I did like the artwork. It meets classic Archie and horror werewolf style that we need, so I do like the art style. And overall, it definitely gave me enough to want to pick up more, but I wanted a little bit more from Jughead. It's just because he's so separated to the other story, I wasn't as invested in our main character as our supporting characters. So Jughead The Hunger issue 1 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 7, which is Batgirl issue 16. And at first I thought this was going to be a little lower, because I was like, alright, we get the Red Queen storyline again, I'm kind of over it. But the story kind of gives us a little bit of a twist here, and we find out that another person was the Red Queen, and I'm actually interested in seeing what her motives are and learning more about that character. And of course, I love the Batgirl Dick Grayson dynamic. I love a little glimmer of their romance in both the present and the past. I love the innocence of their romance in the past, and then the history that we know from Batgirl and Nightwing in the present, and that weight of that history. Only negative really is the lanky artwork. I still can't really get over that. Dick Grayson looks very skinny, and that's weird because Dick Grayson is more fit than that. He kind of looks like a young boy even in the present, so that's kind of a little bit of a nitpick. But overall, I thought this was a solid issue, and I'm glad even though this arc's been going on for a little while, it's still interesting. So Batgirl issue 16 gets 4 stars. Moving on to a book I'm glad it is a bit higher in the past couple of weeks, and that is Detective Comics issue 967. This had a lot of interesting elements with the return of Tim Drake. The return of Tim Drake, where everyone finds out except Stephanie that he's back, and our Tim Drake, he's still our Tim Drake. He wants to team up with his Bat family and figure out why the future Tim Drake wants to kill Batwoman. And it's interesting that we don't know if future Tim Drake is evil or not. Like, what are his motives? What has he seen? And I'm interested to learn more about that. And we get to see some surprising players here. I thought they balanced the Bat family really well. We get to see Betty here. I love Betty. And the one thing I really liked about the New 52 Batwoman was that they focus on Betty a bit more as a character. So it was nice to see what she's been up to. And she's actually trying to join the military. So she's at West Point and trying to follow the footsteps of Kate, and I really like that. Even though it's just that one page, it was nice to see their relationship, because I think that's, next to Kate's father, I think that's one of the more interesting relationships Kate has. And Betty's always kind of like a sideline character, so it was nice that they remembered her, and that she still wants to be a superhero. So hopefully we'll get to see more of her as Detective Comics continues, because that was a nice little surprise in the issue. She also has a bit of a new look, too. And I just like the new direction they're going with Betty. So Detective Comics issue 967 gets 4 stars. Really solid, some good character work here. Artwork, paneling-wise, it's a little confusing the way they go into the 2 pages, but still solid pencils. So Detective Comics issue 967 gets 4 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is All New Wolverine, issue 26, and this was a really interesting issue with Sarah Kinney returning, Laura's mother. And there's some nice humor in the issue too, because Gabby's like, that's my mother too. Let's have a daughter-mother day where we braid Jonathan's hair and Beast's hair. I thought that was an hysterical line. But we also get a bit more serious in this issue too, that Sarah's there to protect her daughter when she, you know, tells her about the sword that still exists, and now Laura's gonna have to go to space and try to melt it. And then it's interesting also to see the Orphanex, learning a little bit more about them as they kidnap Dakin, and Dakin's running away, and the cliffhanger is that Dakin's running away from nothing. So, are the Orphanex real? What's going on? So, some interesting mystery, good character moments. I enjoyed this issue. So, All New Wolverine issue 26 gets a solid 4 stars. Moving on to number 4. I'm glad to see this in my top. Hack and Slash Resurrection issue 1. This is a really good return where it didn't feel too exposition heavy for new readers, and also just helped you jump back into this world, because it's been a little while since Hack and Slash has returned. And it honestly had so much sass that you want from Cassie's character. Like her just now living her life, playing video games, even though she doesn't like video games. She's really good at it because of obviously her past and being able to kill monsters. So I like that. And her just always quoting, you know, it's special that I'm putting pants on right now. Because she likes being alone. She likes living this life. And then she gets a phone call from one of her old, her mom's old co-workers. Who said, oh, you know, I know what happened with your mom. Help us with this camp. Cassie's like, alright, I guess I'll go help. She goes there and finds out the camp is not exactly what she thought. And the kids are waving swords and knives around. So this is definitely not your regular camp. Definitely like the little horror cliches that's going on that she has to go to a camp. It was just fun to see Cassie's character again. And with the new creative team really owning her character, and I enjoyed it. So Hack and Slash Resurrection issue 1 gets a solid 4 stars. Moving on to number 3, a book that I've been pleasantly surprised with. I'll probably be moving to print soon, and that is Bloodshot Salvation, issue 2. I've never really been into Valiant. It's always been really hard for me to get into this company, but this is so new reader friendly and a really interesting story. As we see in the present, Magic and her daughter, who's maybe like 6, are trying to run away from something. And she is, you know, all bloodshot. So you're wondering, how does this normal kid become that? And in the present, or the past, we do learn that happening. So our Bloodshot, our main character, runs off to go up against Magic's father because he's not a good person and has been antagonizing Magic. So he goes off to do that and leaves a note to Magic. And Magic sees their daughter have a temperature, brings her to the hospital all worrying, and then the Bloodshot appears. So really interesting stuff. I love the family dynamic here, and I really like the pacing of the book too. So I give this one 4.5 stars, and I gave that number 3. Alright, so moving on to number 2. This is, I think, probably the highest this book has been, and that is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 20. And this actually is totally not, well, it is connected to our present Power Rangers, but it's not our present Power Rangers at all. It's a one-shot issue where we get to see the original Power Rangers from the 1960s, and how they came to be. And it's different from what you would expect. You expect, alright, they get their powers, they're gonna be Power Rangers forever, or at least until they give it up. And no, Zordon only makes them do one mission, and that's it. They taste power for a second. And we really get to see the stakes higher in this issue, because not everyone survives the journey. And then also there's some just fun dynamics that we don't really get to see in the Power Rangers, like our female Red Ranger. And just seeing people that walk from different forms of life coming together and trying to work together. But the issue ends on an interesting cliffhanger where we get to see our Red Ranger, Grace, kind of walk towards the dark side a bit, where she grabs the Green Ranger dagger, the dragon dagger. So what's going to happen there, especially now we know that Grace is interacting with our Rangers. So is she evil? Is she not? Some interesting stuff here. I really enjoyed this one. Also, I really like the art change too. I feel like it was a bit more expressive than what we usually get. And also, it helps to show that this is a different story outside of what we've been getting from Power Rangers. So overall, I gave this issue 4.5 stars. Moving on to my pick of the week, which is the obvious pick of the week for me, and that is High Five Fight Club, issue 3. I love this book, and this issue does a really good job at having Chris interact with everybody. Dolores, Irene, the whole team, now that she's actually part of the team. And she's using her detective skills, which is really great. And I like the throwback of her having to look back in a lyric book and finding music through the thank you notes in a lyric book. It shows that it was harder to find music back then than it is now, where you have Spotify, Pandora, and all these stuff. It was harder to find your music. And I like that. I feel like it's more deserving. You earn your music then. So I definitely enjoyed that aspect. And just the music influence of this title in general. But I especially like the dynamic between Maggie and Chris. I always like their dynamic, but I especially like it because this time we get to see Chris a bit jealous. She sees Maggie talking to this boy, and Chris is like, oh, what's going on? Like, does she like this guy? So you get to see the tension rising in this issue, and then in the end they're able to laugh it off. But it's a cool will they, won't they still scenario in the issue, and I do like their relationship, and hopefully in this last issue they do end up together, and at least Chris tells her feelings to Maggie. So High Five Fight Club issue 3 gets 4.5 stars, and that's my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Of course, I'll have Comic Uno episode next week. This is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, in the description below, there are links to my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.